I remember I had asked you guys to go and rewatch our last session and to ensure that you master the simple concepts we shared during that backend class. So, how many of us were able to rewatch the session? Okay, so Avalon, you did. Is it only Avalon that rewatched it? Okay, so only Avalon rewatched it. Yes, Miracle, the one I labeled backend. Yes. Chimeze, what about you?
So I've had a lot of catching up to do. So I've even been rewatching the other ones that I missed the last time because I traveled. The ones that I've not been in class with. And there are some issues I'm having, and I messaged you, boy. Now some.
Okay. I remember seeing a message from you, but I've not responded to most of my chats yet. I'll respond between now and Saturday, right?
Everyone knew if I could come to the office today, but
No, you
since
can come on come on Saturday.
okay,
Yeah, come on Saturday because I'll be very busy today and tomorrow.
okay,
So by
okay, no,
Saturday, I would have responded to all chats anyway.
okay,
So, but you can still come on Saturday.
okay, no
I believe I'm
problem.
talking to you.
Okay, so thank you, sir.
Okay, so Precious Chuku, what about you?
So I'm trying to rewatch other videos, like the previous ones. I've not really gotten understanding
Sure,
of
you
it.
guys are aware I prophesied about this time during the IT when you guys will be so carried away with other things that you will not have time for the IT program. I prophesied about it, but don't allow that prophecy to manifest on you, right? Just it may not take time now. I remember I looked at that video, the video for the last class. It was just 46 minutes, 46 minutes long. So assuming for some reason you know you were going to come to class today, like it means you could not spare even 45 minutes because if you could spare like 30 minutes, you will notice that you can actually watch that video because there are some places you will want to fast forward because we are just maybe repeating or emphasizing something, right? So I really encourage you guys to not slack. The temptation is there to slack because you're going to see things that look like priority at this point because probably they are going to bring in money, they are going to bring in, they might give you more satisfaction. This one might look like a thorn in the flesh. It might look like a throat, there's a bone that is hanging in your throat that does not want to go down or come out, right? You might find it uneasy, right, to go through with it. But that's even the more reason to go through with it, right? Because for the fact that it's giving you concern means that because you should naturally be inclined towards uh, um, conquering or overcoming obstacles. Because the promise you've heard regarding the IT is that you're supposed to come out tops. So if you're seeing that it looks as if this thing is challenging and you're not top yet, or you're not at least up to date, then you push yourself. That should be the more reason why you should push yourself. So if you discover that there are still things that you are not doing, even up to the minimal standard I've set, then how do you come up tops? How do you want to do it? So guys, I encourage us to take this thing seriously, right? It's not good that I babysit us all the time on these matters, right? Assuming we did that class like 3 hours. If you go to the data class, the data guys, Sometimes they have their class 3 hours, 4 hours, and they are there. And they rewatch these things. They're the ones that disturb me the most for their videos. They rewatch them. Why make sure that ours, that recorded sessions don't go beyond 1 hour, so that we can be comfortable assuming we wanted to rewatch them. But we are not doing so. We are not. Now, like the data guys today, they are doing it like a 6-hour class because they've not had class for 2 days now. Like today, they are doing a 6 hours class and their session is being streamed and they would want to rewatch it. Just join the data class and see the length of their videos if you don't believe what I'm saying. So why are we not serious over here? At least with the little we are doing, even if we are not doing much, the little we are doing, master the little we are doing. Because it's by the time you start despising the little we are doing, you might think, what was this thing, until you realize that we have actually stacked up knowledge that you're struggling to catch up with. Because you're ignoring when we're doing them little by little. So, guys, let's proceed. We are going to try and finish up what we started. Now, since you guys have not rewatched that video, I don't know how I'll actually interact with you guys now. And I will not ruffle feathers in the sense that there are concepts that I felt some of you may be struggling to understand as at that last class, which made us to stop and to ask you guys to go and rewatch the video so that you can get a hang of what we're doing. So that by the time we come back today, we can build on those concepts. So how are we going to build on those concepts now? Okay, well, since Avalon rewatched them, Avalon, did you encounter challenges when you went through those videos?
I didn't really encounter a particular challenge, but I just feel like it's something that I need to practice and practice over time for me to understand the concept very well.
Okay. All right. But at least you're getting a hang of it little by little, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we'll see what we are going to do today. I will continue with that project. Avalon, you raised your hand. All right, so we're going to continue with that project. So remember that in the last class, we mentioned that when you're building a web service or when you're building backend infrastructure using Java, now the framework we are working on is referred to as, I think I need to share something with you guys. I need to share something with you guys. Okay. All right. Please, you need to understand what we are doing here. I had to come back to mention this so that we get a proper grounding on what we are doing, right? Because you're going to hear other common terms that are thrown around out there in the industry about how to go about building web services. Okay, so the approach we're using now is referred to as JAX RS. Now, this is Java standard API for building RESTful web services. JAX RS or JX RS, right? So this is Java standard API for building RESTful web services. And when we say RESTful, I believe you must have encountered the term REST during your theoretical classes in school, right? Which stands for representational state transfer, representational state transfer. Okay, and we know why this is important when we are talking about web communication. Okay, so if you don't know about REST, please go read it up. It will not take, maybe it might just be a 3 to 5 minutes read. Okay, so if you want to build that kind of web service, a RESTful web service, right, then JAX-RS is one approach to use. Okay, and it's part of Jakarta EE, formerly Java EE. Now, Java EE, that is why you would notice if it's in Java EE, the package name you'll be seeing is Javax dot blah blah blah. But since it's now part of Jakarta EE, will now be using Jakarta. Now, for some of you, for those of you that were there in the last class, you will realize that when we created the first controller, that's a config file was also created for generated for us by NetBeans, and part of the pack package names, right, that were imported into the config file required or had the Javax namespace. So, but we had to manually change it from Javax to Jakarta. Now, that is exactly what this guy is referring to. So, if you see something like Javax and you're seeing it being underlined, all you need to do is to remove that Javax and change to Jakarta. Okay, so if you're using Maven, this is one way to go about setting it up, but we are not using Maven, right? Okay, so we are using ants, and because we are using ants, everything is done for us, right? So remember, we had done all of these things. This is the configure class, right? The configuration class, right? And in fact, this is very manual anyway, assuming you're not doing things using any of the IDs. But if you're using any of the IDs, a lot of these things will be automatically generated for you, and it will be easier for you to handle them. So, and I explained what all of these things are in the last class. I explained this. I explained this as well. What these annotations, what they represent. Okay, so for you to be aware, this is Jack's RS way of doing these things. And some people also refer to this as jersey. Some people loosely refer to it as jersey. Okay. So when you hear jersey, then you must be sure that you are also they are referring to the JAX RS approach to implementing these things. Okay, so please bear these things in mind. You hear jersey and you hear JAX RS, so they are talking about the same thing. Okay, so but it does not mean that they mean the same thing. But in the industry, when you hear people talking about jersey, they are loosely referring to it as jersey. Okay, so
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, but I can't hear.
Okay. It seems like maybe he has network issues.
Hello guys, sorry, I lost data and I was talking to myself without realizing. I hope you can hear me, guys.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, as I was saying earlier, it's very, 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 very important that we realize what we are pushing. Okay, can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
What do you mean by okay?
I said not yet. I cannot see your screen. I don't know for this.
Let me try that again.
All right.
All right, so like I was saying, guys, the hardcore way we are approaching backend infrastructure for now is using the JAX RS approach. Okay, and so, but we are not going to be using any build scripts like a Maven, Gradle, or all of that. We are not using any of that. We are doing it hardcore because we are going to be using the resources available to us just from the IDE to build this stuff. So we are not going to be using build scripts like Maven or Gradle, right? So we're just doing it simple and straightforward. Now, assuming this was a backend class, right? So we would have explored a lot more things. We would start from JAX RS and then move into things like MVC, talk about MVC. From MVC, we go into Spring Boot, okay? And then from Spring Boot, we start talking about microservices. Okay, so bots, this is for the web guys, right? But I don't think the web guys in this course, in this current batch, will go that far because they started from front end, and building from front end through and through would be a challenge, right? So in the last IT, why I separated backend from front end, I noticed that I had difficulty having for those that joined the backend class because they had not done front end. So coming into backend was quite a challenge for them. So they did not quite get the hang of what we are doing. So, but for you guys, since you have seen something on the front end a little, which is on mobile app design, it's not too difficult for you to kind of understand what we are doing for backend because the idea there is that we are trying to fetch resources that we are going to consume in our mobile application. Okay, so having set that straight, okay, so bear in mind, this thing is very important. Hear this thing, man, what I just showed you here today about JAX RS, okay, so that you can have something to talk about, assuming someone asks you, so if you wanted to build a web service, right, what technology would you be using? Okay, so you can simply say that you'll be using JAX RS, okay, and that this is a Java specification that people have adopted for use in building web services. In fact, that it makes building web services very simple, right? Particularly when you're building RESTful web services. Okay, so why does it make it very simple? Then you go ahead and start talking about it, right? That uh, building web services with JAXA is very simple because a lot of things you would have done by manual configurations, you can just achieve them by just using annotations, right? So that this annotation simplifies work. So instead of writing various several lines of code to achieve something, you can just use an annotation and then achieve that same thing because these things are repetitive in nature. So that's what these annotations do, right? So we already know that people will build endpoints that will do things like this. So we use annotations to represent that kind of purpose or that kind of uh, um, objective, so that if you wanted to achieve something like that, then use this annotation to represent what you want to achieve. Okay, so those are talking points you could use. Also good for your IT reports, assuming you would want to document that. Right. But that is not our concern today. Our concern is that we want to continue with what we have started. We created two resources, right? We created two resources, and we also created just one service class. So two resource class and one service class. Remember, we talked about the differences between the resources and the services. And the resource is your controller, is like your router. It is like that place where that interfaces with all web requests. So as interfaces with the web request, it will take it and then know how to route whatever request that is coming in. And so if we open this auth resource, for instance, you're going to notice that anybody that is calling on the auth, right, service, anybody that wants to do anything relating to auth will have to direct their request to auth. And then from auth, they can now navigate to either login or sign up. And so one of the key things we had started doing that day was we wanted to flesh up the sign up, right? But we did not go very far. The only thing we did was to create a dummy method inside our auth service class, right, to represent the sign up, right? So because if we navigate to this method, let's navigate to that method and see what we have. Right click and say navigate to source. Okay, and you'll see that is a dummy method. Nothing was there, right? So we just put that in. And so today, before we even go ahead to flesh out this method, this perform sign up method, right, we are going to learn a number of things. One is that we're going to learn how we can test our APIs. Two, we are going to learn how to connect to databases. These are the two things we want to learn today, and we'll stop it. We'll stop for the backend class today, right? We want to learn how to test our APIs and also learn how to connect to our APIs, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. So because I'm about to use a very sensitive app, right? So let me prepare that app very well before there are a lot of bank infrastructure that could be exposed. And some of these banks, you should not know about them. You should not know that I'm even connected to them, right? So it's also for your safety, guys. So once I switch to what you need to see, right? Okay, I've switched. So I can now share the screen again. All right. So one very important, you see this software here, Insomnia. This is okay. Now, what I didn't want you guys to see is inside this collection here, right? Very crazy things, like very crazy things. So by organizing it into collections, that this guy has very sensitive things. So I don't expose it, okay? Right? Particularly since this video is also online. So I cannot expose this. Okay, so but I can expose this one because these are just learning materials that I have here. Okay. So now this software is Insomnia, and it's not the only API tester out there. We have quite a number of them. Okay. So let's talk to ChatGPT. Say, tell me about Insomnia or alternative API testers. Okay, so now Insomnia is a popular open source API client for testing REST, GraphQL, and gRPC APIs. Now, it's widely used by developers to send requests, debug responses, and organize their APIs. Now, key features is that this guy allows you to test REST endpoints. Like what we are building REST. And I know I've mentioned this already when I introduced you guys to JAX RS. Now, but there are people who build GraphQL kind of web service. Okay. So, but what we are focused on is on REST. Okay. So now if you read up, if you I'm sure maybe you would have come across these things in school, right? I think I spoke to the our guys, IFT guys, fourth year, first semester. Did I teach you guys this? Okay, maybe I didn't talk about it this last semester, right? But usually I give examples on this kind of stuff, right, in class. But the easier and the more trendy guy, right, today is the REST guy. Okay. Also, although there are places where these guys would have advantages over these guys, right? But we want to focus on the rest now because that is what you see more commonly out there, right? Okay, so with Insomnia, you can do quite a lot of things. In fact, just is your API tester for now. Understand it that way. It's your API tester, and we're going to see what that means, right, as we go ahead. Now, remember that what we have been trying to build is an API, and so we're going folder to handle that our own requests, any request that is going into our the software we are building. And so let me create a new folder here. I'll call this folder Volunteer Health Officials API. Right, create the folder. Now that I've created the folder, I can come into the folder and create a new HTTP request. Now, what is this request about? Notice here that it says this is a get, right? So from get, I can have post, I can have put, patch, delete, options head, and all of that. So, but like I told you guys in the last class, we are going to focus on get and post. All right. So the next thing we need to do, since we've gotten that far, so guys, try and download that software and install it. At this point, I don't need to show you how to install software, right? If you go online, you'll find links to downloading Insomnia, and I recommend you download Insomnia. Another very popular guy is Postman, right? But download Insomnia so that you can follow exactly what I'm showing you guys in class. Okay. So now remember that when we had started working on this stuff, we called our project VHO API. And so if we want to access these endpoints we created or the functionalities we have, such as the login functionality or the sign-up functionality, we must first access the project. And how do we access the project? We have to access the host where the project has been installed or where the project is running, right? And so the host or the system where this project is running is currently my system, and my system can be accessed by typing http localhost colon 8080. Now this 8080 you must know by now. This you must know by now, right? Is the port number for Glassfish. 8080 is the port number. 80 is the port number for Glassfish. And I believe you guys already know this by now anyway, because there's nothing you're running on your system that does network, any kind of network call that does not have a port number. And the reason it must have a port number is so that any application that wants to access the contents of that software would be able to access it specifically, because there are many software on your systems that are interfacing with your network, right? And so for you to be able to access a particular software, then you must access it through the port number, right? That port number is the address for that software on your system. And remember, the assumption here is that this system is not here. So even though we are calling it localhost, but the assumption is that we are not referring to our system. Okay, so consider this local host an IP address. Imagine it as an IP address. Okay, so It's actually an IP address, okay, or what we are going to refer to as a domain name, right? So instead of having because the numeric equivalent for this local host is 127.0.0.1, which is a standard IP address. Okay, so but since we don't want to use that numeric number, we can use localhost. If you use the 127.0.0.0.1, it will work very well, right? So the assumption is that this guy may not be on this system. So assuming this guy is in some other system anywhere, this is the way you also access it. HTTP or assuming SSL is configured, right, for that communication, and then you specify the IP address, and then you specify the port number for the web server you're using. Remember, we explained this previously, right? That Glassfish here is your web server. Remember, we did that in our last class when we told you how to go about installing and downloading and installing Glassfish. Glassfish is your web server. And what does a web server do? A web server is that place where you drop your web applications, and it will help you manage the web applications and provide your web application as a response to anybody that is calling onto it. So that web server is there to organize all your web applications and send out serve as an interface between your web application and the users. So the web server houses your web applications so that when somebody looks for any aspect of your web application, the web server can pick it up and serve that person. Okay, so and our web server that we are using for this course is Glassfish. And this Glassfish, its address on the network on this system is 8080. And so if you don't specify 8080, now you know what they look for. Okay, so the address is 8080. So, but if we can start talking to you about advanced cloud computing concepts, then maybe we might delve into this deeper and deeper. But I don't think we are going to have time to go into all of these things. Okay, so except maybe in your final year, because if you look at the IT program we shared earlier, right? So we wrote somewhere that cloud computing and DevOps, right? Cloud computing was supposed to be running at the same time this period, right? But it's not running. So, but DevOps, we are going to do it because usually I teach software engineering guys, right? I teach them DevOps engineering, right, in their 500 level. So you guys, if you are interested and you're not in software engineering and you want to find out more about this cloud computing, backend stuff, and all of those things, you can join that software engineering class, first semester 500 level. It's usually a very hands-on class. I don't talk much in class. I don't write much in class. Okay. Some of you already know that about me now. And so we make that class very hands-on. You'll be able to buy your own server. You do quite a lot of things. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, then you can join that DevOps engineering class when we get to next semester. Okay. So, but that is by the way. Now that you have been able to type HTTP up to the point of the port number, the next thing you're going to type will be the name of the project. And guys, I hope you can see hear me.
We can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Can hear you.
All right, so you type the name of the project, and in this case is Volunteer Health Officials API, and then / again. This is where you will now go in and look for if you had an application path. Remember, we said the application path is the path to the entire project. So this is the path we specified here. You can copy it out or type it out manually if you want. Okay, so I'll specify that path here. Then if it's login I'm looking for, I can also look for login. But I don't want to do login. I want to do sign up first. So I'll go back to off resource. The sign up here, I can also copy this. Oh, before I can access sign up, I must access off first. So let me copy off. And then sign up. Guys, you understand how we arrived at this URL?
Yes, sir.
Right, so the URL here is HTTP. That's assuming you've not configured SSL, right? And then the IP address of the system or the server, and then the port number of the web server. Now, this IP address is for the physical machine, the real computer where the web server is installed. Now, this guy here is the port number for the web server. The web server, in this case, is a software. And then this is the name of your project. And this is the application path you configured. And this is your controller path or your resource path, right? And this is your endpoints. Okay. Now, but if you look, you notice that the method we have here is a post. So we are going to go back to that guy and change it from get to post. All right. So we'll go back again, and you notice that this endpoint here is saying that it is expecting data to come in as form parameters. It is expecting data to come in as form parameters. So that way, we'll come back to our API tester again, right? And then change this body here and say we want to use form URL encoded. Want to do form URL encoded. Now, when we do that, we are now ready to communicate, right, with that backend we just developed. Okay. So now the next thing we want to do now, guys, is that we are going to begin to submit those parameters that the endpoint is requesting. Now, the first parameter, remember what we said, the difference between this P0 and user ID. We said that this P0 is what the user must call the parameter they are submitting to us. But this user ID is all we are referring to this parameter in our own backend here. So for the user, for the front end, for the API tester, they must call this parameter they are submitting to us P0. So I'll come in here and say P0, and then what we're expecting is an ID. So I can say SP4123. Yes. I'll click on add so that I can add the next parameter. That will be P1, and then I can specify the password. So the password this time, let me say 12345. Okay. So now we have created everything we need to be able to respond to, or to be able to communicate with that endpoint. Now, but remember that this endpoint is returning a plain text currently. And so if we send in this user ID and password, it is supposed to invoke this auth service and then return 001 for us. And so let us come here and test to see whether it will return 001 for us. So click on send. So it's telling us not found. Now, not found means that this address you specified cannot be accessed. And so there are a number of reasons why that could happen. Number one reason is this software or the web application you created, that's the VHO API, is not running currently. So that's the first thing you must check. Check whether the guy is running. That's the first thing you must check. Is this guy running? Now, don't even bother trying to go troubleshoot, because you'll be wasting your time a lot of times. Check whether the web application is running. And so let's come back here. And what we are going to do is to deploy our web application, because all this while we've not deployed it. So let's click on deploy. Deploy means run it. Now, notice that when you right click on the project name, you're going to see run and you see deploy. Now, when you click run, you use that when you're building a web application that has a GUI. That is when you click on run. But when you're dealing with just backend code, please use deploy. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
All right, so when you have clicked on deploy, if you look at your output, it will tell you that the project has been successfully deployed. As you can see, this Volunteer Health Officials API has been deployed successfully. Okay, so which means we should now be able to access it. So let's go back to that API tester, click on test again. And you guys can see there's 001 here. Now that's the response we are getting from that project, which means that our web service is working just fine. But you know that regardless of whatever is sent in here, it's always return 001. No matter what we send in, it will always return 001. And so this 001 is supposed to be the user's ID. And returning 001 all the time does not make sense, right? Because currently it's just a dummy data. So let's go and actually flesh these things out. But before we flesh them out, we have to learn how to interact with databases. Remember that before now, we had spent 3 weeks to learn how to build, how to design and implement databases. We took time to learn that. We took time to learn how to design and implement databases. We took time to learn how to design and implement databases. And I know maybe at the time you may feel that you're not going to need it. But here we are. So let us learn how to do it. Okay, because all this while we're just learning it theoretically, we were not actually, not theoretically per se, it was actually hands-on class, but we were not learning it in the context of a software developer. We were just learning it in the context of a database administrator, right? We learned how to run those SQL commands and all of those things. So, but if you're a software developer, how do you make use of all of these things? So that is what we want to bring into perspective today. Now, remember that what we have achieved so far is I've shown you how to test your API. So if you do this and you're not getting this response, then something is wrong. There's no point, something is wrong. Okay, so you have to just go back and maybe look at the things you've done to be sure that you're doing it well. Now that we have gotten this far, I would like to create another service that will handle all database activities for us. So I'll call that service the DB service.
So excuse me, I want to ask a question.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I'm still trying to understand how exactly this whole backend API something is related to the Android Studio app that we are building. Please, I don't know if it's possible, if there's a way you can just explain what this web service that we are building is for, like how is it related to that Android Studio?
Okay, so let's make it very simple. So I'll ask ChatGPT the same question. As a mobile app developer, why do I need a web service? Okay, so you see, it says that here's why you need a web service when you're building mobile apps. Number one, data synchronization. Mobile apps often depend on often need to store and retrieve data. So now that I'm talking about database, right? Imagine this sign-up case we are building here, right? So essentially, what I'm doing here is to test whether the API is working. But in the real sense, the person that will be sending this data to the API is your mobile app. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So remember that we have a sign-up screen on that mobile app we're working on, right? Do you remember that? So let me show you that sign-up screen. We designed it, but remember it's not something very beautiful because we are not considering beauty for now. Okay, so we have a sign-up screen, right? So this is our volunteer health ID, official ID, and then the password, and then sign up. So the idea is that when you hit this sign up button, this data, the ID and the password you've entered, will be captured and transported to this backend infrastructure and submitted to these endpoints, so that this endpoint will now call up this service and create a user profile on the database and then return your user ID to you. Does that make sense, Avalon?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. So remember that the web service you are working on is the brain for your app. The bank apps you're using, most of the apps you're using, whenever you see you hear that this app needs data to work, any app at all that needs data to work, means that there is a backend infrastructure somewhere, means that there is a web service somewhere. So the reason for the data is because you need connectivity to that web service. So whatever you do on your app has to make reference to that web service, because the web service is the brain box. That is why you see that a backend developer who knows his onions is very highly paid, very, very highly paid. Because you see that desktop applications also need these web services. Mobile app applications also need these web services. Web applications also need these web services. And in certain cases, for any project, any serious project at all, they'll assemble the backend developer team first. They'll finish the backend infrastructure before they start hiring front-end guys. So front-end guys are only coming in to come and consume what has been created, because they've created it and tested it and it's working. And how did they test it to know it's working? They are using tools like this. So that when you as a front-end guy come in and you build one interface like that and you say it's not working, they will show you proof that it's working. So it will now mean that what you're building as a front-end guy is where the problem is, because they've done their job and they've tested it and there's no issue. Avalon, I hope that adds more layer of information, right?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you.
Right. If you want, you can also take time to read up, ask ChatGPT similar question, and you're going to find quite interesting things you can do, because your mobile app is interfacing with a web service, right? Interesting things. Yeah, Chimeze, go ahead.
Sir, I want to ask a question that's quite concerning based on what you just said. So, this mobile app that we're doing now, like you said, in a serious project, they assemble the backend guys first and all. So, like with these things we're learning, are we like going to be on the like backend side or front end? I don't know if you get.
I get what you're saying. Now the thing there is this. You are fortunate as a learner to be learning mobile app development the way I'm showing it to you. Now, what some mobile app development training programs will show you how to use things like Firebase, right? And that's known as serverless codes, right? And so let's ask ChatGPT again. Any serverless alternatives? Yes, if you don't want to build and maintain your own backend with JAX RS or Spring, you can go serverless. You can use Firebase. You can use Amplify. You can use Superbase. Yeah, Superbase is another very popular guy, right? You can use Upright. You can use Backendless, nhost. In fact, there's this other guy, Pass Server, right? I think Pass Server. I think that's Pass Server. It was developed by Facebook. Pass Server. That was one of the first guys I learned in this thing. Yeah, Pass Server is one of the big classic serverless backend alternatives, and many mobile developers still use it today. Right. So Pass Server is another very powerful one. Right. So assuming you don't want to be doing backend blah 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 blah, most mobile app development programs, actually teach people how to do these things using these serverless stuffs, right? Okay, and I don't want to take you guys through this route because it's basic, right? It's easier for you to pick this up than to pick up what I'm showing you guys. Now, what I'm showing you guys, if you're serious, that's the caveat. The caveat there is if you're serious, you can decide to now develop yourself further in these directions. Now, I have somebody, right, who mastered these things to the point that now the projects he gets are more in the back end projects. The project he works on today. In fact, some of you in IFT might know the guy Kamzi. Does any of you here know Kamzi? Don't know whether you guys will know Kamzi. Just the set that just graduated. Now he did IT with me, and then he focused on mobile app development. Now the reason he was able to grasp the backend stuff and focused on it, picked it up, learned it, became very proficient in it, and today is fetching him millions. Like, and I'm not exaggerating, right? It's because I exposed them to this route. Okay. And I'm not saying it is bad to pick up knowledge on things like Superbase, things like Amplify, things like Firebase. These are very powerful things, right? Very, very powerful. You can actually learn them, but they are not as complex because we just sometimes you just need to click, and that is it. No setup, nothing. In fact, in most cases, you don't even need to write code. But with what I'm showing you, you must write code. Must. So it's better I show you the tough things so that later, if you discover this, you'll be like, this man was wicked though. Why was he showing us the tough things, not showing us the simple things? Right? But at least I've told you that those simple things are there. Right? So, but learn the tough things first. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So, like what I was saying is that what we want to do now, right, is to learn how to connect to databases, right? So, and we have created a DB service class, and this DB service class will help us do that job. Now, but before you do that, there is something you must download, and this is a connector, is essential. Is essential when you're building from Java or from any programming language at all, and you're interfacing with a database management system, right? So you will need a connector that would sandwich your own software and the database, right? Because there are quite a number of things that go on when you're interacting between your software and the database that your own code cannot fully write out. So you will need a library that where a lot of these things has already been done, right? So that you can just take from that library and do whatever you want to do. Okay. In fact, you rarely need to even interact with the library anyway. Okay. So, but it's just that it is there to serve as a sandwich or a nexus between your software and the DBMS. Okay. So you need to download MySQL connector for Java, right? And if you go to the download center, you download a zip folder. Just click on the platform independence option, right? And then download the zip archive. Don't download this other archive. This other archive is for Linux system users. So download this guy. When you download it, extract it, you're going to see a jar file. Now that jar file is what I'm going to attach to libraries here. So I'll just right click on libraries, click on add jar or folder, and then look for MySQL connector, which is that guy there, and then click on open. So with that, I have added MySQL functionality, right, to my software, right? No, my SQL capacity to my software. The functionality is not there because I have to specify the functionality. And so for you to be able to connect to a database that is already in existence, right? Because remember, this is what our database would look like. Okay, so this is sensitive stuff. Let me close this. Now, this is actually a customer's project, very complex project, like very complex project. When I got this job and I was pricing the job for like 1 point something million, I was thinking that after all, I'll finish in 1 month. But this is me working on the project for 3 months. And it's now I'm even wishing that I delegated some part of it to AI, but I built everything manually. Okay, guys, that's by the way anyway. So you must have created a database because all these things we see here are databases, right? All of them, some of them very sensitive. As some databases here, the name may not look like it, right? But there are microfinance institutions databases that are here, right? Okay, their database structure are here. Okay, so but that's not for your consumption anyway. So once you have created a database and it's being managed by your DBMS, the other thing you just have to do is to attach that library, right? And then you write a code that will fetch connection to that database so that that connection is what your software will now be using to do whatever it has to do with the database. And so for us to begin to do that, let me import the Java SQL package. And then I'll begin to create functionality that will help me. So I'll say public static connection. Now this connection is referring to database connection. Okay, so that's what it will be returning. And then I'll say get the connection. Right. And then the first thing I'm going to do is to register this driver, the driver in this library that I just brought in. And how do I do that? I will not go into details explaining all of these things, but let me just show you how to go about this. Just master what I'm showing you. You don't need to know the complicated details of why these things work. Just know that this is how it is done. If you want to know the details, just copy this code, right? Copy just the snippet, the code snippet right now, drop it on maybe ChatGPT and find out what each line does. So ChatGPT will take time to explain all of them for you. Okay. So because this classes has gone beyond 1 hour now, I would like to quickly wrap it up so that the recording will not be too lengthy. So this is class.forename. Okay, so I want to register this driver, which is com. Let me look at the name. The driver class is inside here, and that is com dot mysql dot cj dot jdbc dot driver. Okay. Once I register that, I'll then return connection from the driver manager. And this get connection class requires 3 parameters. The first one it requires is the URL. So I'm going to create the URL. Now remember that every resource on your system has a URL. As long as this resource is exposed via a software, and that software can listen to the network, it must have a URL. So I'll say string URL is equal to. Now remember that in the case of our HTTP request, the protocol we use is HTTP, right? Because this is a web request, right? But the kind of URL we are creating now, it does not represent a web request. This is a database request, a data request. And so the protocol will be different. The protocol will be MySQL JDBC, then before your /, then but the address remains the same, localhost. The port number is different this time around because the port number of MySQL on this system is 3306. And so if you remember when you were installing your MySQL software, it asked you for whether you're comfortable with the port number 3306. So that's how you access your MySQL. And then you mention your database name. And assuming our database name is Volunteer Health Officials DB, right? You just mentioned that, and that's your URL. Okay, then the username for your database. Let me use roots here. Password. Let me use something very simple, NASO. Right, now that I've done that, you realize that this guy is still showing red lines, and this is because there are potential errors that could be thrown as a result of this instruction you've given here. So what I will do here, I'll say, please add a throws clause. Adding a throws clause means that this guy is signifying that this method contains a statement that could generate an SQL exception error. All it simply means is that this method can potentially generate this kind of error, so that any other guy outside of here that is trying to make use of this guy can know how to prepare to handle this kind of errors. So if you're not ready to handle this kind of errors, you will not be able to make use of this method. So you have to notify ahead of time so that anybody that is trying to consume this method will know exactly what to do. Okay, so we'll also do the same thing for this potential error, add throws clause. And that is it. So this method we've created now is what to help us access our database. And so what we're going to be doing in our next class is that we're going to start by creating this database. And we're going to create this database now, right? We're going to create it, and then we'll also create the staff table, right? Or the user table. We'll create the database, create the user table. Remember the user table, what is important is the staff ID, the user ID, and the password, right? So we're going to create the database, create the table, right? So that in our next class, our focus would be on how do we write a code inside this auth service that will make use of this database connectivity method to commit this information to our database, so that when a user does something on their mobile app, it will travel all through the network and it will now find itself inside our database. That is what our focus will be in the next class. But before that next class, let us go ahead and create a database. That's a volunteer health officials database. Apply. It's as simple as that. If you remember how we did it those days, right? We created a database, and then we can go into that database and create a new table. And this table, we're going to call it users. Okay, so the first thing we want to have is ID. I'm sure you guys remember all of this. So this should be, let's use staff ID. And then the next thing here, password. And then maybe we're going to talk about the role of the staff, because there are many of them that will be logging in. And then we'll talk about join dates. Now, but these join dates, we are going to make it automatic so that we don't have to manually specify it. I'm sure you guys remember all of this.
Yes.
And so the rule will not require much characters. So we're going to just password. We can allow maximum of 6 characters. And then staff ID, we can allow maximum of 6 characters as well.
We can also add the sex of the staff.
Okay, we are not doing any of that for now. We are not doing any of that for now. Remember the sign up form we have here just allows only ID and password, right? So which even means that this role, we are going to make this role have a default value. So we might just make this role have staff, right? Not admin. Just make the role have staff, so that whenever you sign up, the date will automatically come in for you, and your role will be automatically made staff. And then the staff ID and password you specified yourself is what we are going to record for you. And so once you're sure of that, you can now click on apply. And so we now have our users table inside our this is so what we can do, we can even go ahead and add sample data there, right? So like what we've been using all this while, which is SP 4555. Sorry, 4555. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's make it 6. Okay. And then we click on apply. So now that we've applied, we can see what happened here. It automatically added role as staff for us, and then added this join dates for us automatically. Okay, so the ID also came in automatically. Okay, so now this is the what we are going to be working on from the next class. We are going to attempt to make use of what we have done here, right, to add information to that database, that table we just created, and then we'll also make use of this same functionality we've created to do login. And logging in means to see whether we can fetch information that we have already signed up with, right? Fetch it to authenticate whether we are actually submitting the right credentials. So these are the things we are going to target doing in the next class. Now, I would encourage you guys, as much as it lies with you. Let me stop the streaming first before I issue this warning. Now, as much as it lies with you, just